a lot of times afterwards, and I realized it was a rite of passage. How can you give a platform to those people? They don't really care about America. They don't care about our party. They just want to make money. And so this is something that he believed for so long, even before that, from the John Tower nomination, which I won't go into now, but this is something that he was crazed about. And you know what? Look where we are today. He wasn't wrong.
Hey, David Gregory, just one thing. I want you to comment on this in terms of the big picture, because we often talk about the norms that President Trump is breaking, the different standards that he's setting, but the disrespecting of a war hero seems like a big one.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody gets over that. I don't know how military officials who serve in this administration and others outside the administration, how they forgive it, how they get over it. It is an act of smallness that is not befitting the President of the United States, and that is who this president is. And I just think the contrast of his behavior and his smallness and those comments about John McCain in his passing just loom ever larger. And I just don't know. I suppose the only thing you can say for those who support the president on a number of bases, you're just going to have to look the other way and somehow be in denial about that one, and that'll stand as what it is. I want to comment on what Smirk was saying, and Dana too, about, you see, to me, what McCain was saying there was something he's been saying for a long time. You know, back in 2000, he was running for president. He would say, friends, you may not always agree with me, but I will always tell you the truth. That was what the Maverick style was about. That was that he was a strong enough senator, like Ted Kennedy, that he could work on legislating, that he could work with Democrats, that he could work on controversial matters, and he knew that his political base wouldn't desert him. That's what he was saying, and that's what's missing now. So it's talk radio, but it's also monetizing political division, which is what social media now does, because and in many ways cable news as well, because we have an inability for members of Congress to be able to do their work without being seen as sellouts. So we don't value that kind of legislating that John McCain stood for. And that is what is passing now. And it's unclear whether and what it will take to get to allow someone like a McCain to emerge again, to have the political space to emerge again. I'm not so sure that someone like John McCain will ever emerge again. And I'm talking about, look, we talked to Patrick Kennedy about that before. Where are people going to find that healing? I have a hard time assuming it will happen. I will say, going back to 2000, David and I covered the Bush campaign. We weren't on the McCain campaign, but the McCain Straight Talk Express in 2000 was the closest thing ever to a candidate going full Bulworth, which is to say just untethered to anything and just going to say what he really feels. Michael Smerconish, and he dialed it back to an extent in 2008 for that candidacy. In a big way. But it was interesting to see a politician who, for a time, was unafraid, Michael, to say anything.
True. Also someone whose hallmark, I think, has been not only bipartisanship, as evidenced by his working relationship with Senator Kennedy, but also civility for the most part. What occurs to me is that today, this morning, is the start of a week of national reflection. And I don't just mean about Senator McCain. The contrast between his legacy and what the country is now experiencing is something we're going to see for the next 6 days, culminating with Presidents Obama and Bush eulogizing, in the absence of the current commander-in-chief, their fallen colleague. And I think every day this week, people are going to have to stop and reflect. Where have we become? What have we become? And where have we traveled? Not in a good way.
Dana, I was on the Straight Talk Express during that 2000 campaign, for a portion of the time, and it was really fun. I mean, there was so much camaraderie, as you know, and being able to watch John McCain unvarnished, and he loved that retail politics. He loved being able to, give all those stump speeches and have people mix it up with him. So one of the things that I think was his hallmark is that he was able to mend fences with his political opponents. And you sat down with Hillary Clinton, at times a political opponent who he became
drinking buddies.
Thank you. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So here were her thoughts.
2008. For a long time, people thought that the two of you were going to go up against each other.
We did. I think we both thought that. I thought it would have been a great campaign because we both respected each other. We'd worked with each other. And in that campaign that eventually did happen with Senator McCain running against then Senator Obama, I so respected John because, you know, when his supporters got carried away and started making racial or religious comments about then Senator Obama or Mrs. Obama, he would just shut them down.
Your thoughts, Dana?
He did, and it obviously did take a very different turn because it wasn't Hillary Clinton on the ballot. It was a man who was trying to be the first African-American president of the United States, and he shut them down, but my memory in covering the 2008 campaign, and I did start to finish, was that was after a lot of consternation within the McCain campaign and a lot of criticism that the McCain campaign got because a lot of the people in the crowd were holding signs with racial overtones, were making comments very similar. And so he began to do that slowly but surely, and that culminated in his probably the best speech he's ever given. One of the best speeches, I think, in political history, which was his concession speech, begging people to come behind the new president, marking the moment not for him, but for the country and for history. And that, I think, says John McCain in a nutshell.
You know, it's interesting how often McCain found himself in this relationship of tension with his party and even with the politics of the moment. We talked about it earlier in the program. 2008. You know, he was had become, in effect, a Bush Republican, being a stalwart supporter of the surge in Iraq, believing that if he put his hand up for the war in Iraq, then the mission ought to be completed. And there was such a deep desire for change. And of course, that was represented by Iraq. And that hurt him in part against Obama. But there were other portions as well where he had so often to get right with the Republican Party. That relationship between McCain and his own party was always difficult, certainly in the years that he was running for president.
All right, David Gregory, Dana Bash, Michael Smerconners, thanks so much for being with us. One thing Dana said that I do want to highlight, you know, she says she was ripped by Senator McCain. It's not that it was all rainbows and unicorns. I think every member of Congress, every reporter who ever got near him has some scars.
Oh, he had a
dealing
temper
with Senator McCain, but he would be the first to admit his flaws.
Absolutely. And he tempered his temper with humor. And that was really appreciated, at least on the Straight Talk Express.
All right, John McCain's bravery in just unthinkable conditions honored. Up next, we're going to speak to an Air Force colonel who shared a cell with McCain as they were held captive in Vietnam.
Comforts of life here. I loved it for its decency, for its faith, and the wisdom, justice, and goodness of its people. I loved it because it was not just a place, but an idea, a cause worth fighting for. I was never the same again. I wasn't my own man anymore. I was my country's.
A cause worth fighting for, and Senator McCain did fight his whole life for this country. There's one picture we want to show you this morning, and we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. This is the White House, and you see there the flag raised to its top, full staff. Yesterday, the flag was at half staff at the White House to honor the passing of John McCain, we believe. We're not quite sure what's going on here. The president never released a proclamation, which generally speaking keeps the flag at half staff until the burial, which will happen in a week from now. With the flag flying full this morning, we want to know why. We're asking the White House, is this intentional? We're going to get to the bottom of it. In the meantime, an important discussion. In October of 1967, John McCain was flying a U.S. Navy flight over North Vietnam when his plane was shot down. McCain spent the next 5.5 years as a prisoner of war, enduring torture and isolation at the hands of his captors. Joining us now is retired Air Force Colonel John Furr. He was a prisoner of war along with John McCain. They shared a cell with each other for 2 years during that captivity. Colonel, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I just want to get your reaction when you heard the news that Senator McCain passed away.
Well, for me personally, it was a void that was created by John's departure. I'm generally a very optimistic individual, and even in the prison, compound, I was optimistic and I was hopeful, as was John. And when I found out that he had this incurable form of cancer, I got down on my knees and I prayed very hard that he would survive and be cured of this dreaded disease. It was not to be, and when I got up on Sunday morning and I found that he had passed away, it was like getting hit with a sledgehammer right in the knees, because I knew then that the country was going to be absent an exceptional American that was patriotic, courageous, and dedicated to those principles that you find in our great documents that's guided this country for so long.
You first met John McCain inside a prison cell in Hanoi. Shared a remarkable 2 years with him as cellmates in the Hanoi Hilton. What did you learn from Senator McCain?
The single most important thing that I learned from John McCain is summarized in a statement that he often made to me when we talked about military leadership. And that is, it's the mission and the men. The mission and the men. In the prison camp, it was resisting exploitation by the communist North Vietnamese, and at the same time, caring for those of us that inhabited that place. What John said on the floor of the Senate when he returned for that